Black Waitress feeds a homeless clown every day, not knowing he's a billionaire who's testing her kindness. What if the kindness you show to one person leads to the most unexpected life-altering decision you've ever made? Nia Johnson was 28, but the weight of her life made her feel older. As a black woman navigating Chicago's hustle, she'd learned early that the city didn't hand out kindness freely, especially not to someone like her. By day, she worked at Lush, a high-end restaurant in the Gold Coast, where Chicago's elite dined on $200 plates of artfully arranged food. The patrons, hedge fund managers, tech moguls, influencers, tipped generously when they felt like it, but their eyes rarely met hers. To them, Nia was invisible, just a black waitress in a crisp uniform, there to serve and vanish. "Hurry up with the water," they'd say, or "This isn't right," without a glance. She'd smile, nod, and bury the sting. By night, she traded Lush's crystal chandeliers for the fluorescent glare of Benny's Diner, a 24-hour spot on the edge of the loop. Here, the crowd was raw: truckers, nurses, drunks sobering up over burnt coffee. It was a different kind of invisibility, but Nia preferred it. At least at Benny's, people didn't pretend to be something they weren't. And then there was Charlie. He shuffled in every evening around 2 a.m., a homeless clown in a weathered costume, bells jingling faintly on his oversized shoes. His face was painted white, with a red smile that looked drawn by trembling hands, and his eyes carried a quiet pain. He always ordered the same, black coffee and a single pancake, paid for with crumpled dollar bills. Nia didn't know why she started giving him extras: a second pancake, a strip of bacon, a to-go cup of coffee. Maybe it was because he never demanded anything, just sat quietly at the counter, his painted smile hiding his story. Maybe it was because, as a black woman who'd spent her life being overlooked, she saw something of herself in him, someone the world had stopped seeing. Those small acts of kindness became her defiance against a city that ground down people like her. Her life wasn't supposed to be this way. Growing up in Englewood, Nia had dreamed of being a chef, her hands crafting dishes that told stories of her roots, her grandmother's cornbread, her mother's collards. But dreams were expensive, and money was scarce. Her mom, a black single mother, had worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat, only to die of a heart attack at 49. Nia was left with a stack of bills and her younger brother, Jamal, to care for. Now, at 28, she was still hustling, her dreams buried under rent and Jamal's community college tuition. At Lush, her manager, Claire, a wiry white woman with a permanent scowl, treated Nia like she was one mistake from being fired. "Smile more, Nia," Claire would snap. "These people don't come here to see your attitude." Nia knew what she meant: don't look too black, too tired, too human. At Benny's, the vibe was looser, but the pay was worse, and the late hours left her drained. Still, she liked the diner's honesty, the way it felt like a snapshot of Chicago's underbelly, everyone equal under the flickering lights. Charlie, though, was an enigma. He didn't fit with the truckers or the drunks or the cops grabbing a late-night burger. He was a question mark in a clown suit, and Nia couldn't help but wonder about him. "You ever gonna tell me why you dress like that?" she asked one night, half joking, as she slid an extra pancake onto his plate. He looked up, his eyes glinting under the smeared makeup. "World's a stage, Nia. I'm just playing my part." His voice was rough, like he'd smoked too much or cried too long. She didn't push. Everyone had their scars. Months passed, and Charlie became a constant in Nia's nights. She'd save him the best pancakes, golden and fluffy from the griddle. Sometimes, during her break, she'd sit with him, listening to his cryptic stories about the old days, or the way the world used to turn. He never gave details, but his words carried a weight that made her think he'd seen more than most. At Lush, the grind was wearing her down. The customers were pickier, Claire was harsher, and Nia's tips weren't stretching as far. Jamal was struggling at school, and the pressure to keep him on track was relentless. She started noticing a man in a tailored suit lingering outside Lush, watching her through the glass. He was older, maybe 60, with sharp eyes and a face like carved stone. He never came inside, just stood there, his presence unsettling. Nia told herself it was nothing. Chicago had its share of oddballs, but the feeling of being watched clung to her. One night at Benny's, Charlie came in later than usual, his costume dirtier, his hands trembling more than normal. "Rough day?" Nia asked, setting down his coffee. "You could say that," he muttered, his painted smile twitching. "Ever feel like the world's testing you, Nia? Like it's waiting to see if you'll crack?" She laughed, but it was hollow. Every damn day. As a black woman, she'd felt the world's eyes on her since she was a kid, judging, waiting for her to slip. She slid an extra pancake onto his plate, but he didn't touch it. Instead, he stared at her, his eyes cutting through the diner's haze. "You don't have to do this, you know," he said quietly. "The pancakes. The coffee. You don't have to." "I know," she said, wiping the counter to avoid his gaze. "But I want to." He didn't say more, but he left a $5 bill on the counter, more than his usual crumpled ones. It felt like a gesture, but she didn't know what it meant. The next night, he didn't show. Nia told herself it was nothing, he'd missed nights before, but the diner felt emptier without his jingling bells. When he finally appeared the following night, he looked worse, his makeup smudged, his costume torn at the shoulder. She gave him a plate of pancakes and sat across from him, her break just starting. "You okay, Charlie?" she asked. He stirred his coffee slowly. "You ever wonder what people are really after, Nia? What they want when they're nice to you?" She frowned. "Sometimes. Most people want something, I guess." "Not you," he said, his voice low. "You don't ask for anything." Her chest tightened. "Maybe I just don't reckon I'll get it." Growing up black in Chicago, she'd learned to expect little from a world that gave less. He looked at her for a long moment, then dropped his gaze. "You're wrong about that." The conversation left her rattled, like she'd missed a piece of a puzzle. She started noticing things, details that didn't add up. Charlie's shoes, despite their grime, were expensive leather. His hands, though dirty, were soft, not rough like someone who lived on the streets. And that black car she'd seen outside Lush? She swore she saw it parked across from Benny's one night, its engine idling. It was a bitter February night when everything shifted. Benny's was quiet, the late-night crowd thinned by the cold. Charlie came in, his costume soaked from the snow, his face bare of makeup for the first time. Without it, he looked older, his face lined but oddly refined, like he belonged in a penthouse, not a diner. Nia froze, a tray of plates in her hands. "Charlie," she said, her voice unsteady. He sat at the counter, his eyes locked on her. "My name's Charles Whitaker." His voice was clearer, stronger. "And I owe you the truth." Her heart pounded. "What are you talking about?" He slid a business card across the counter. It read, "Charles Whitaker, CEO, Whitaker Enterprises." Her hands shook as she read it. Whitaker Enterprises was a Chicago titan, a conglomerate worth billions, with stakes in tech, real estate, and finance. "You're not homeless," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "No," he said. "I'm not." She set the tray down hard, plates clattering. "So what is this? Some kind of game? You've been coming here for months, letting me—" Her voice broke. "Letting me, a black waitress scraping by, feel sorry for you?" "Not a game," he said, his eyes intense. "A test. I wanted to see who you really are, Nia. And you're the real thing." Her face burned. "A test? You think you can just play with my life like that?" "I know it sounds bad," he said, leaning forward. "But I've spent my life surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, power, favors. You're different. You gave without asking for anything. That's rare." She laughed bitterly. "So, what? You're gonna make me your charity case now?" "No," he said. "I want you to work for me. A real job, Nia. Management training at Whitaker Enterprises. 6 figures to start, full benefits, stock options. You'd never have to worry about money again." The words hit her like a freight train. She thought of her crumbling apartment, Jamal's tuition, the endless grind of 2 jobs. It was everything she'd ever wanted. But the way he looked at her, like he was still testing her, made her stomach twist. "Why me?" she asked, her voice sharp. "What's the catch?" "No catch," he said. "But you need to decide if you trust me." She didn't. Not anymore. The man she'd thought was Charlie, the broken clown who needed her kindness, was a lie. And yet, his offer was real. She'd looked up Whitaker Enterprises on her break, and Charles Whitaker's face stared back from the company website, unmistakable even without the clown makeup. Nia couldn't sleep that night. She lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, Charles's card on her nightstand. As a black woman, she'd spent her life navigating a world that judged her before she spoke. Now, someone was offering her a way out, but it felt like a deal with the devil. The next day at Lush, she caught herself scanning the street for the black car. It was there, parked across the street, and the man in the suit was inside, watching her. She felt exposed, like her life was a stage and she hadn't known she was performing. She started digging. On her phone during breaks, she read everything about Charles Whitaker. He was 62, a widower, no kids, known for his cutthroat business tactics and odd behavior. There were rumors of him disappearing for weeks, living among the homeless to understand the city. She found an article about a former employee, a black man, who'd been offered a job after Whitaker tested him, only to be fired when he didn't meet expectations. The word manipulation kept cropping up. At Benny's that night, she confronted Charles. "You've done this before, haven't you?" she said, slamming his card on the counter. "Tested people. Played God with their lives." He didn't flinch. "I've made mistakes," he admitted. "But this isn't like that. You're different." "How do I know that?" she snapped. "How do I know you're not just setting me up to fail? Another black person you can toss aside when you're done." He looked stung. "I don't see you that way, Nia. I see someone who could change things." She wanted to believe him. The job was a lifeline, a chance to escape the grind. But the idea of entering his world, a world of power plays and hidden agendas, made her skin crawl. She'd spent her life being invisible, and now someone was finally seeing her, but it felt like a trap. She started noticing changes. At Lush, Claire stopped snapping at her, even praised her work. At Benny's, a new manager appeared, complimenting her efficiency. It felt orchestrated, like Charles was pulling strings. When she called the number on his card, his assistant answered, offering to set up an interview at her convenience. It was too perfect, too easy. She met Charles at a coffee shop downtown, not Benny's. He was in a suit, no trace of the clown, but his eyes were the same, sharp, searching. "I'm not here to pressure you," he said. "But I believe in you, Nia. You could be extraordinary." She leaned forward, her voice low. "If I say yes, what happens when I don't pass your next test? You drop me? Or do I owe you forever?" He looked hurt. "I don't want to own you. I want to give you a chance." She didn't know what to believe. Her whole life, people had let her down. Her dad, who left when she was 5, her mom, who worked herself to death, the world, which saw her blackness before her humanity. But Charles's offer was a door to a new life. The question was whether she could walk through it without losing herself. Nia took a week to decide. She talked to Jamal, who was skeptical but excited about the money. "You deserve this, sis," he said. "But don't let him play you." She called her best friend, Tasha, who laughed and said, "A billionaire clown? Girl, that's a movie. Take the job, but keep your eyes open." She met Charles again, this time at his office, a sleek skyscraper with views of Lake Michigan. He was professional, no trace of the eccentric clown, but his intensity hadn't faded. He laid out the job, a management training program, a starting salary of $120,000, and a mentorship under his top executive. "You'd start next month," he said. "If you want it." She studied him, looking for the lie. "Why do you do this? The clown thing. The tests." He sighed, leaning back. "I built an empire, Nia. But it's lonely at the top. I wanted to find people who aren't like me. People who don't play the game, who do what's right because it's right. You're one of them. She wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. And if I say no? Then you keep being you, he said. And I'll keep coming to Benny's for pancakes. She laughed despite herself, and for the first time, she saw him as human. Not a billionaire, not a clown, just a man who'd lost something and was trying to find it in her. Nia said yes. Not because of the money, though it would change her life. Not because of Charles, though she wanted to believe in him. She said yes because she was tired of being invisible, of letting the world define her as just a black waitress. She'd take the job, but on her terms. Her first day at Whitaker Enterprises, she walked in with her head high, ignoring the whispers of her new colleagues. She was ready for the game, but she wouldn't play by their rules. As a black woman, she'd faced worse than corporate politics. She'd make it work. She'd learned from Charles, trust had to be earned, and she'd make him earn hers. Months later, she was thriving, her natural leadership shining through. Charles became a mentor, not a tester, and she began to see the man behind the clown, a man who'd made mistakes but wanted to do better. One night, she invited him to Benny's, not as a billionaire or a clown, but as a friend. They ate pancakes, and for the first time, she felt seen, not as a black waitress, but as Nia. As they left, the neon sign flickered above them, and Nia smiled. She'd taken the leap, not for him, but for herself. And in a city that chewed up dreams, she'd found a way to make hers real. A year later, Nia was running her own team at Whitaker Enterprises, her vision for a community outreach program taking shape, focused on uplifting black and underserved communities in Chicago. Charles, no longer hiding behind a clown suit, was her biggest supporter. She never forgot the diner though, and sometimes, on late nights, she'd stop by Benny's, sit at the counter, and remember the nights she gave a clown an extra pancake. Kindness, she'd learned, wasn't a weakness, it was her strength. As a black woman who'd fought to be seen, she'd passed the only test that mattered, staying true to herself.